Jim tell me
told them they were in Appalachia because in Harris there's several people with flu and they just keep them just as far as don't come in and keep area where you bring yourself to.
right.
So then we're worried. I don't think it's the flu. I think she has. Most of them have though.
I would think, I never got mine. I should have, and I still should, based on everybody. The only other were down at the barn. I mean, I kept playing, I'm going to get it hours ago. I never did it last week. I had it.
We're hoping we're so baby man since March. So we're waiting for baby to baby.
Well,
You need your first shot. I don't think okay. So I just
well, usually, well, I mean, they said they try to predict the strain of fruit like this. It's not good, but
or they get the same one. You know what? I never looked out. Did it dissolve on it? It's 3.5 weeks.
I wasn't going to, but I told the guy, I said, the girl that took them off last time ruined my nails. I said, it's going to be 6 months.
And I feel mine at least a while.
And I told them, I said, she filed, because she puts it on the color off, she files the color off of my nails. Which is really good. It's like, who was it? And I'm like, I don't see her here. So, well, I got rid of somebody. I said, well, I don't see her here. I don't know who it was. Yeah. So I said, well, I always do that. There's another lady in there fitting to dress down.
They don't heal, that's for sure. I can't believe how long it lasted.
Now,
I know it's
everything
been.
I read about it, the way you take it off is kind of similar to we will. They say it's better.
Oh no, thank you.
I just can't believe that one of my reviews already checked that off. So it did last really long.
Yeah, this lady that sitting next to me, she said, I love it, I've been doing it for a while now. I think
Or maybe it was after that.
yeah, I don't remember.
It was after the time after.
Yeah, this is 2 weeks that I was great. But yeah, it's done.
Like everyone's attention. Hi, I'm Ashley Webb. I'm the curator of collections and exhibitions here at the Historical Society, and I wanted to thank you all for coming today. This is going to be a really exciting event for the Historical Society and for Mill Mountain Theater and this collaboration, so we're really thankful you guys are all here. But before I turn it over to them, I wanted to thank a number of sponsors on our end. And first I'd like to thank the East Tennessee Historical Society and Knox County Library for allowing us to host the exhibition, which if you haven't seen it yet and you're not able to see it today, it's actually just through the back double doors and to the left. It'll be up in the Link Museum until March 21st, so I definitely suggest you guys go see it. It's a really great exhibit. It's got a lot of interactive components for both adults and kids, so please come visit. I'd also like to thank a number of people, because without them, this exhibit, Patchwork, and all the accompanying educational programming wouldn't have been possible. Those include Kiwanis Club of Roanoke, Valley Wealth, Honeytree Foundation, Brickhouse Properties, Member 1, Ron and Janice Sink, and Dr. Nelson and Brenda Green. I'd also like to thank the Grandmothers Who Read, which includes Rindy Lionberger, Jackie Phillips, Dee Harrison, Natalie Norris, Brenda Williams, and Fran Krause. A huge thanks goes out to them because they've been so willing to go into the school systems and take a little piece of Appalachian history and tradition and spread that throughout the schools. So we're really thankful for that. I also wanted to thank volunteers like Sandra Kelly, Natalie Norris, and Anna McLean for promoting, running programs, and putting so much energy into making this exhibit a success. Without them, I don't know what I would have done, so thank you. I'd also like to thank the Roanoke Arts Commission for supporting Patchwork and making all the programming for Reading Appalachia available. Without their help, this event today would not have been able to happen, so grateful to them for that. I'd also like to thank Jay Briggs and Travis Kendrick for taking an idea and creating something from nothing. And turning into this exceptional production with all about the theme of growing up in Appalachia. Working with them on coordinating all the story circles and seeing their process, writing this from scratch and really making it into something beautiful has been so amazing. So thank you all for that. And then lastly, I'd like to thank the conservatory students for all their hard work and dedication and for making this production their own. It's been such a great process to see it last night for the first time, and they've only been working on it for like 3 or 4 weeks, so it's fantastic, and I hope you guys really like it. And then one last thought before I turn it over to them. If you like what you see today and would like to continue supporting collaborations like this and educational programming with the Historical Society, we are accepting donations. There is a little plexiglass box in the back right-hand corner, or left-hand, where Stephen is, the back. If you have anything, change, dollar bills, whatever, we are so happy to take that, of course. And that will all go towards creating more educational programming for the Historical Society. So, I'm now going to turn it over to Jay Briggs, the Director of Education and Community Engagement with Melnon Theater. So, thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. So just a couple things before we get started. She's done a lot of she did the hard work. She had to thank all the people. But I will take just a second to thank Ashley because she came to me to Ginger Poole in July and said, hey, we've got this exhibit coming up that's all about children's literature in the Appalachian region. And maybe we could find a way to collaborate. Maybe you could come read some stories for us at some story hours or some stuff like that. And so Ginger passed this along to me, and being a little insane like I am, I went and met with Ashley and I said, yeah, we could do that, or we could do something totally crazy. We could try to, this question around what it means to be a child and grow up in this region is one that's specifically poignant to me as a guy who grew up near Asheville, North Carolina. So I was like, Ashley, we could read those stories, and we're happy to do that. We'll definitely do it. We've done some of that. But we also could find a way to generate some stories and build a piece of theater from that. And so what you're going to see is the result of those labors over the last couple of months. We started with what we call some story circles, which are a time for people to come together and answer some questions and share some stories. We also had our cast members do interviews with people that they knew that had grown up in this region. We also did writing prompts, which special thanks to people like the West End Center for using those writing prompts with their students and some of the public schools. And so we took all of this information, and what you're going to see today is primarily direct quotes from those things that have then been theatricalized. So it's a combination of sort of traditional Appalachian storytelling with some physical theater, and these actors really built it themselves. So under the sort of direction of Travis and I, who sort of gave them some vocabulary and some ways of working, what you're going to see is really stuff that they've generated over the past 4 weeks alongside us. So I hope that you enjoy. It's not a long piece, so don't worry if those of you feel like you in the back need to stand up to see a little better, that's fine. The whole thing runs about 35 minutes. If you want some more information about the actors, we don't have a program, but we do have their bios and stuff right here on the wall, so feel free to do that. And then afterwards, we will have just a little bit of time for y'all to engage with the actors, have a short talk back. I think you might be kind of interested about what their process was and how this thing came to be. So we'll have a short 10-minute conversation for any of you who want to stay and have that sort of conversation. So I think that's it. Without further ado, let's turn your cell phones off. Yeah, oh yeah, turn your cell phones off, please. Yeah, it's a very small space. Yeah, without further ado, the cast and creators of Patchwork.
We started off this exploration with a question.
What makes an Appalachian childhood?
What makes it unique? Are there sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and feelings that define a childhood amidst these blue mountains?
What makes this place home?
What's one word that defines your childhood? Free range.
Sweet, changing, adventurous, turned out,
Wonderful.
Loud. Big. Big like openness.
Freedom!
loneliness. It was loving, but it was lonely at times. It was only me and my mother. My father was killed on D-Day. She was such a big influence in my life. We worked hard together. She was a nurse, and there were times when she had to be gone and I'd be by myself. I remember those days.
Imagine your childhood home.
Home.
What do you see?
A fireplace. Flowers.
A swing set.
Sun through the leaves.
Pets.
A yard.
A hill. Mountains in the distance. The star. I used to travel a lot, to and from Roanoke, and I always remember coming back and seeing the star on the mountain. And I knew I was home.
Imagine your childhood.
Home.
What do you hear?
A clock.
Bum, 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 bum.
Bum, 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 bum.
Birds. A sprinkler. Chickens.
Church. Let the church sing.
Amen. A train whistle. My grandfather was an engineer, and he had his own unique whistle, so when he came through town, we knew it was him. We could recognize it. Imagine your childhood home. Home. What do you smell?
Laundry.
My dog. Fresh air. Oranges.
Candles.
Cedarwood.
Grass.
Banana bread.
Mom's cooking.
My grandmother made a pound cake with a genuine pound of country butter and a dozen eggs. I'd like to see anyone who could make that same pound cake today. And she lived to be just short of 100.
Imagine your childhood home.
Home.
What does it taste like? Brownies.
Toothpaste. Turnip greens and green bean casserole. The humidifier.
Goulash.
What's goulash? Macaroni, ground beef, tomatoes, maybe some rice. Whatever you had to throw in.
My grandfather had a pig named Pork Chop. I know, and whenever we would go to visit him, I would always pet the pig. One night, we sat down to dinner, and I realized he killed it. I shouted, "I don't want any part of that pig!"
Imagine your childhood home.
Home.
What do you touch?
Dirt.
Massages.
Sap on my hands from climbing a tree.
Christmas ornaments. Prickly bushes.
A lot of love.
That teddy bear I loved so much. Sure, he only had one eye, and his left arm was practically falling off, and his tummy was kind of extra squishy. But he was perfect. He felt like security.
We had an ice box before the refrigerator. The iceman would come with blocks of ice in the back of his truck and chip some of it off. And there was tar on the bottom of the truck where the ice sat. The tar was hard because it was cold, but we'd break off a piece and chew it to hell. It didn't taste very good. My grandma's quilts. Hey, wait up. Come on.
I'm getting dizzy.
Hold on.
war, we had a roof over our head and a 3-room house. My brothers and I lived upstairs in the attic. There's no insulation up there, just a tin roof. And when it stormed, we could hear the pitter-patter of rain hitting the roof. When we slept, we thought it was wonderful. When it snowed, all we had were quilts to keep us warm.
My paternal grandmother had a sister who worked in a women's garment factory, and she would get the scraps. And those scraps would be sent on a steamboat. My grandmother would get them off the steamboat and make quilts. Whenever we would sleep over at anyone's house, we would always sleep on the floor on pallets. And those pallets were always made of quilts.
Our grandmother was a big quilter. She made lots of quilts. Growing up, we always had big quilts around the house. And every Sunday, we'd go to her house and eat, and have lots of conversation, and lots of love. It was a big old family. Christmas time or Thanksgiving, there would be like 50 people, and that was not unusual. Everybody just found a seat and did whatever. And yeah, Granny loved to quilt. They weren't fancy quilts like people make today, just the ones with the squares. Our dad worked for the garment factory, and he would bring home scraps, and she would use those to make quilts. She didn't keep them. She gave them all away.
My dad, he worked in the coal mine. Everyone worked in the coal mine. When my granddaddy died from working in the coal mine, my dad had to take his place. He was 13. My dad worked that mine until they fired him for cutting off his finger and getting black on. All those years working in the mine, and they just got rid of it. So he started a taxi business. And on the weekends, he ran a moonshine business with Big Bad John, a famous bootlegger. He was a distant relative of my father. That's how he made some extra cash. That, and uppricing the regular stuff on Sundays. He was chased all up and down town, but the police could never catch him.
I remember the wind across my face, walking until my feet ached, across a bed of pine needles, soundless while I moved.
Appalachia can't be defined without the mountains that lend it their name.
What do you think of when I say that?
I think of the Appalachian Trail, mountains, and blue.
Appalachia Mountains are 1,500 miles long and stretch from Newfoundland to Alabama.
My mom grew up in Pennsylvania, and my dad is from Kentucky. And my mom loves the outdoors. So we're going to be there for that evening. And we're going to hike in the lot during the summers.
I didn't think I'd ever end up living here. I've been in and out about 3 or 4 times in my career, and the last time I moved back, I said, this is it, I'm staying.
They represent one of the most biologically diverse regions in the world.
I can see those really curvy roads and the endless long hill up to my house.
I'm very proud of my heritage. Coming from a background of Appalachian Native Americans, it's always been very important. Learning about that culture, about that faith as it really is, and learning things about nature has really defined me since I was young. Appalachia isn't who I am, but I have a very strong base here, and I associate a lot with the South. And my family is very Southern, and they like things like outdoorsiness and lakes and fishing and stuff like that. But I just don't seem to fit in here. But this is something that's very loved by my family. And I feel like I can easily adapt to my surroundings and other places. So my future is pretty open as to where I could go. But this is where my base is.
And they are old, some of the oldest mountains on the planet.
I'm a very active person, so I like to do things. And I want more than what's just in our area.
So everything I do here just keeps kind of repeating and repeating, and I just want to move out of here and do something different.
I have a lot of different backgrounds, and I don't like being outside. If people from Appalachia like being outside and fishing, so I don't know. I was born and raised here, but I don't like to do what everyone else does to do.
What's your least favorite part about living here?
I just don't seem to fit in here. I see myself someplace bigger, like California or New York. This place just doesn't fit me. Although this is home, it just doesn't fit me.
I love people and theater, and I want more than what's just in our area. But in New York, you can't just go hiking or fishing or rock climbing. It's just not available there.
And here, in our part of Appalachia, the trees release a gas into the air that creates a distinctive bluish hue and characteristic haze.
As I get older and kind of think about what I'm heading to in the future, towards college and beyond that, I realize that there's a lot of things around Roanoke that make it really unique. Like the surroundings are very different from anywhere else in my country.
Don't you just love these blue mountains? Don't they make you feel secure?
I remember the wind across my face, walking into my field, across a bed of pine needles, soundless while I move.
My father was disabled, and back then there was no workers' comp. He was injured on the job. There was no workers' comp. There was no unemployment. So when Daddy got hurt, and this was before I was even born, Mom had to work full-time to support the family. And even though he was able to go back to work eventually, he still couldn't get a very good job because of his limitations, because of his handicap. He lost the use of one hand and one arm. And it was hard for my mom, but it was hard for him too. He got a job driving a bus for the White Arrow Lines, which is the same bus line that's in the Waltons TV show. On the weekends, I got to ride the bus. All of the African Americans went to the back. Not that my daddy made them do that. He was too kind for that. That's just what they did back then. So I would go back there and sit on our laps because it was bouncier back there, which is way more fun for a child. I will be 70 years old this year, so it's been a long time since I grew up. And we didn't think much of the African Americans going to the back of the bus when I was younger. I just thought they all liked to sit together back there. Truly. I think we were sheltered from a lot. For instance, I didn't know my family was poor. My parents didn't talk about it. We were naive and we were kept that way, which is kind of a blessing. And kind of not.
I guess I was a oppositional child. If someone told me not to do something, I would do it. When I was probably 4 or 5, haters were repainting the barn, and they said,
"Don't touch that paint, kids."
So, of course I did. I dipped the brush in the paint and started painting the cow's noses red. The painters didn't think it was very funny. Neither did Mama. One time, she had my hair all curled up, but there was a big rainbow outside, and she said, "Now don't dump your head in there." So, of course I did.
I wonder why she would say such a thing like that.
How did my family shape me? Well, my grandmother lived with us all of my childhood, until I think about 4th grade. I remember coming home one day and finding her bed gone, and I knew she had died during the day. That taught me, first of all, about life and death, that life went on after death. But I was crushed, so that was heartbreaking. You know, he really didn't have a lot. We were probably really poor, but we didn't realize it. Because we were happy. We were really happy. I was the youngest of 4, after 3 boys. Having 3 older brothers probably shaped me a lot. And this sounds terrible, because they were wonderful, wonderful brothers, but they were boys. And in picking on me and teasing me and putting me down, it crushed my self-confidence. You know, I would love to be more confident like you. If you want something, you just go and get it. But it was tough for me with those 3. It was difficult having 3 older brothers who each felt like they were my father, and that it was their responsibility to make sure I didn't do anything I shouldn't do. So they just kind of squelched anything that I wanted to do. You know, as a teenager, if a boy wanted to ask me out, he was never good enough. That's what they said. I loved my parents dearly. They were older, as far as parents go. And I was probably an accident. But I was never made to feel that way by them. I was so sensitive about having older parents, because they really were almost as old as some of my friends' grandparents. I was always so afraid that someone would hurt their feelings by asking, "Are those your grandparents?" So I was always real quick to immediately say,
"This is my mom and dad,"
just so that everyone knew. Growing up, my father was always very sick. He was very sickly, as they said back then. I mean, he had his tonsils taken out and they grew back. Imagine. But junior year in high school, right around exam time, I was taking my exams and my mom called the school to tell me Daddy was in surgery and he had stomach cancer. I was 17 and a year later he died. I was 18 years old when my father died of stomach cancer. Life isn't always going to be what you think it's going to be when you were little. You just never know how long or short life is going to be. I learned to always tell people how you feel. Don't wait. I worried I didn't tell my father I loved him enough, because I truly did. And I knew he knew I loved him. But the death of my father at such a young age was probably the event that had the biggest impact on my life. It shaped me a lot.
We were a coal mining family, and everything my father earned seemed to go back to the company one way or another. The company owned the grocery stores, owned everything. So it was this cyclical thing where families could never get out of the coal mining town. You see, we didn't get birthday presents. We didn't get presents any time except Christmas. And every year we would get a pair of shoes. And they'd have to last us all year. Didn't matter if you outgrew them. You either kept them on or you went barefoot. One year, my mom accidentally ordered me 2 pairs of shoes from the company store. At school, everyone was talking about what they got for Christmas, and I was so excited and so proud of my shoes. When it was my turn, I stood up, and I said, "This year I got 2 pairs of shoes." The class was dead silent. Someone asked,
"Did you get anything else?"
Everyone laughed. Someone else said,
"I have 10 pairs of shoes."
I was so embarrassed. Now, of course, I have 20 pairs of shoes, and I leave them all over the house just so I can see them. Dorothy puts them away just as fast as she can, but I bring them back out to be thankful and remember, and because I never want to be with just 2 pairs of shoes again. I remember pulling weeds in my mother's garden. I was weeding, and my brother was mowing the grass, when suddenly he hit this giant hornet's nest. Bzzz. I had never seen my brother jump so high right over the garden to get away from those weeds. I remember one time my sister and I played this terrible, awful game. Once, where we saw this hornet's nest, and we were like, "Let's play chicken with the bee's nest." So we took turns spraying it with water and tried to see who could stay there the longest. I stood there the longest. I also got the most bee stings.
I
remember we catch those carpenter bees with the white faces because they don't sting.
We would carry them to school on the school bus in our cupped hands, but they would always end up dying because, we carried them all the way to school on the school bus in our cupped hands. So we would have these elaborate funerals for the bumblebees and pick all of the snowball balloons off of a snowball bush. Or we'd take a tulip and write our name in the petal with our fingernails so it would stay.
Since I was 10, my mom has been divorced and single, raising me and my two sisters when we weren't with my dad. It was always hard for her to push through and keep 3 kids happy. My mom has dealt with repeated loss, the loss of 3 of her best friends. But even through all of these hardships, she still stayed strong. And recently, her example has helped me stay strong in dealing with the same thing. Losing your best friend.
There's a field near my house where, when we were younger, my friends and I would play, and we'd always play 1 or 2 of the same games. The first was basically tag and different variations of tag. Our version of tag had more of a plot line to it. We'd all choose different characters to be. Or we'd play house, but not in a house, so it was more like life. We weren't just in the house, but all over it. I guess we imagined we ran away and were living in an abandoned lot, like the Boxcar Children. We did the same thing over and over again, but it never got old. And at the end, if it was getting towards late afternoon or evening, but not nighttime yet, we typically get tired and lay down. And look at the clouds and just relax. We used to catch fireflies.
Is Appalachia changing?
Absolutely. The farms that have stayed in families for up to 5 generations just can't support that lifestyle anymore. Strip mining and surface mining coal have changed landscapes as well as lives. In the company coal town, where they had the company store, those people were tied together. Everything about them was tied together. I think that one of Appalachia's greatest strengths is strong family ties. But with the decline of the family sitting together at the dinner tables, those ties are dissolving. And we're losing our chance to tell our story and create that family relationship.
We were just celebrating my brother's birthday. We were sitting around the table, 3 generations of us, and talking about the trees as we knew them, our growing up trees. We had this gorgeous tree. My mother called it her Japanese magnolia tree. And it had gorgeous blossoms in the spring. It was probably around 6 or 8 feet tall, and it always got frostbitten in the wintertime. Now, my mama always had the garden club over to her house, and we knew how much that garden club meant to my mama. So she wanted that tree in good, beautiful array when those ladies came up that driveway to her home. So she said to my dad, "Mark, you cover up that tree." And he said, "Well, how am I supposed to do that?" And she said, "I don't know. You figure it out."
So my daddy went to the hardware store and got some of that real heavy plastic and taped it all together and strung it up on a wire or something, covering the tree. That night, I remember looking out my window as the wind came. Some of the plastic didn't stay up very long, and my mama was so sad. Where the plastic fell off and the frostbite came, the tree was black. But where the plastic had remained, it was just perfect. The blossoms were gorgeous. And my nephew goes,
Daddy, I've never heard that story.
and it made me think, we have so many of these stories. We just don't take time around the table to tell our children about.
If you could give your child a piece of advice, what would it be?
Appreciate your mama would be what I would tell myself, because I was a daddy's girl for sure.
Get one of those photo albums and a recorder and sit down with your grandparents and just let them talk. And pass that on to your children. That would be a great thing.
My Uncle Buddy lived in this valley forever. He died at 104. When my son was given an assignment, he said, I'm going to go talk to Uncle Buddy. My dad was deceased, but Uncle Buddy was always there. And my son tape recorded that conversation, and we came across that not long ago. And my son goes,
I can still see Uncle Buddy leaning in, telling me all those life stories, and those were the best times of my childhood.
Well, I tell them to write these stories down.
Our grandmother made lots of quilts. She loved doing it.
My dad, he worked in the coal mine.
my mom's example has helped me a lot. And staying strong and losing my best friend.
We didn't get presents anytime except Christmas.
I stayed there the longest. I also got the most bee stings.
I remember we catch those carpenter bees with the white faces because they don't sting.
All of the African Americans went to the back of the bus.
The death of my father was the event that had the biggest impact on my life. It shaped me a lot.
We were poor, but we didn't know we were poor.
She didn't keep them. She gave them all away.